Ranj, hi.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning to you. Whereabouts are you in the world? You're not in Scotland where I am, are you?
No, I'm based in the Midlands, so near Birmingham.
Great. Okay. Right in the middle, not far from my family actually. So you're a GP. You're a GP and you're also, I can see from your background, health and wellbeing coach, and we've definitely got a lot of overlaps with what we're each doing, which is why I wanted to have this chat. But first of all, like how does one decide as a GP like they're going to be a health coach as well? What was missing from the GP world? I'm making some big assumptions here that there
Oh,
was something missing from what you were giving to your clients that you could do as a health coach, or what was the
absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's not so much what was missing, so what more could I give to patients? And it was more about, so it was a bit of a kind of an evolving journey of what more, because I wanted to be able to do more. Like you say, there's certain things you can't do in a general practice appointment. You probably appreciate, you've got 10 or 15 minutes and you can't really get into, sort of the deeper levels of discussion that you want to with patients. So that was one of the big reasons. So time is such a huge factor, and you need time. Firstly, to be able to just build that connection, that relationship with someone,
Mm,
and especially if you're going to have a discussion about something like menopause, which is a huge topic, and to really be able to understand what someone's going through, what symptoms, how much of an impact it's having on their life. You need that time,
mm,
because at the end of the day, the patient, especially when they're going through something like this, they want to feel like they're being heard.
mm.
And I found you can't really do that so much, in a normal GP setting. So that's where health coaching, I think,
Right.
is really powerful, having that time. And then the other thing is, and again, you can probably appreciate, is because of the lack of time, it's really difficult to be able to help people make their own choices. Although we try to do that as much as possible and try to do things on a shared sort of decision making process, it can be quite difficult. And what we want to do more of is actually empower patients to take
Mm,
ownership of their symptoms, or the problems that they're going through. And it's when they can really make that connection that they can feel sort of more empowered to do something about it and make the right choices for themselves.
yeah.
Two big areas for me.
Yeah, that's powerful, and as a fellow coach, I can really appreciate the need for that as well. So what do your coaching clients typically come to you with? What are you helping them with to find choices and things around?
Okay, I mean, for me, mainly, I deal with a lot of people who want help with weight management. A lot of it is patients who are um, overweight, or they've got some underlying health conditions, and they're sort of getting to a stage where they want to, or they feel, actually, now I should be looking after my health, and actually trying to kind of do. And so it's patients who are a lot of weight management, but also chronic disease reversal. So people who are, like, especially things like pre-diabetes,
Mm,
cholesterol, blood pressure. Patients who can start to see now that these are going to have effect on the rest of their lives in terms of their risk of heart disease or developing diabetes, and they want to actually try and reverse this now so that they don't have those long-term health problems.
mm, mm. So is that something that's easier to manage and talk about and help them with through coaching? Is it a combination of GP services and coaching? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can use, sort of a lot of my experience and knowledge as a GP, because within lifestyle medicine, everything is still as evidence-based as possible. So you're still trying to use evidence-based. So being able to combine those two is brilliant. Being able to show people, and educate them about what the underlying physiological processes are that's leading to them developing high blood pressure and high cholesterol, and why their sugar levels are going up, and then to be able to then relate that back. Actually, we can use lifestyle-based techniques to bring
Mm.
these back.
Mm. And like you say, that gives the person much more agency over the situation, and much more impacting, long-lasting change, rather than it being a single magic bullet, which we know doesn't exist for any health condition. And thinking around that, and your position as a GP, and wanting to provide the help, wanting to listen and feel your and let your patients know that they are being heard, and the overlaps with being a coach. When somebody comes to you and as a patient to your practice talking about menopause, um, I'm skirting around the question, but I'm going to answer. I'm just going to ask it. How do you feel about the criticism that sometimes comes, that I often hear actually,
Yeah.
for GPs in their management and their approach towards menopause, and criticism that sometimes comes from that time thing? How, from a GP perspective, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is difficult. I mean, there's lots of factors, and obviously um, there's so many different kind of elements to it. It's
Mm.
hard, but I can appreciate a lot of the frustrations, from the patient's perspective. Like you mentioned, quite a lot. There's time being a huge factor. You can appreciate, somebody who's going through symptoms, been going through symptoms for such a long time. Then they're trying to book an appointment with the doctor, and we know what that can be like. And then you're having to wait several weeks, and then you finally get to see somebody. And if you don't feel you're coming away from that consultation, having been heard, I can completely appreciate that. So,
Mm.
but obviously, but there's lots of factors in that, in terms of, we know about the strains on the system and things
Mm.
do much about, and also, yes, we have to, we're aware that every GP has a different amount of knowledge and experience with dealing with menopause. As GPs, we have to deal with everything, so we can't
Yeah.
we can't know everything about everything. And so it can be that as well. That you finally get to see somebody, and the person you're seeing might not have as much knowledge as you would have wanted.
Mm.
There's so many different elements to it. So I do get a lot of the criticism. The other thing is, obviously, now there's so much more information widely available to people. There's so much more on social media, and in the news and things like that. And I think that's great. It's great that patients do come having some knowledge of what they want, because that's what we want to do. We talked about empowering patients, and
Yeah.
having them take ownership, of their symptoms and of their management. So this is where we want to be able to develop that sort of shared decision making of, where do we want to, how do
Mm.
we want to manage your problem. So I do get the criticisms, but the other side of it, as GPs, obviously we want to work with our patients,
Mm.
and even if we're not as knowledgeable about it, it's we we want to be able to develop a relationship first and foremost, but there are ways in which we can get more support. I mean, an example is, our practice, I'm quite lucky in that we've got 3 brilliant, well experienced female GPs who have women's health and HRT and menopause as a special interest. So
Mm.
if I do find that I'm having a bit of difficulty, I know I've got support people to ask. So like I said, we want to work with patients. We want to give them as much as we can. If there are things that we're not too sure about, then we do have different ways of trying to get that extra support.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. It's good to hear, good to know, and I feel like I've put you on the spot slightly, but I have to ask these. I want to ask these questions and bring
Yeah.
these things to light. And it reminds me of something that piece of advice that I was given that I pass on to my clients as well. That when we phone to book the appointment with the GP, to ask at that point, can I have the appointment with the GP who is most interested or specialized or has the most training in menopause? And so what you're saying is that that's a very valid question to ask.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, so it's either that, if you can always ask the surgery. I mean, every surgery is different. They might not have a menopause specialist GP. Like I said, I'm quite privileged to be working in a practice where we have three,
Mm,
which is great. But then on the counter side of that is, then I don't see many patients coming for menopause myself.
right.
So um, but when I do, I'm still I'm still happy to have that discussion. I'm still again, personally trying to always try and keep up to date with the latest sort of developments and things. So I do feel confident enough and feel enough experience to be able to
Mm,
have those conversations with people.
that's great. So do you get regular training and updates on all of that, or is that
It,
something you have to do in your own
yeah,
time?
it is all self-directed. But again, for me personally, I make sure that I kind of plan on a regular basis that I'm doing training in all kind of the different specialties across the year, so that I keep up to date.
Yeah, that's reassuring to know. And also reassuring, I hope, for me to be able to pass on to my listeners, my clients as well, because sometimes when I'm giving workshops and giving group talks and there's chat, and sometimes some of those comments can be around the nervousness, the anxiety around going to see a GP first off to talk about these personal issues around perimenopause, postmenopause, and then to be able to have that conversation and try and build that relationship with a male GP. Some people can find that in itself can be a bit awkward. They're not sure what to expect. They're hoping that the person's going to be able to help, but are they really going to understand? Are they really going to empathize? And then, of course, we hear all these awful horror stories of people not getting the help that they've needed. And of course, we hear more of those than the other side of things, because that's how life is. And we know that there is a middle ground. And so what would you say? How do you feel in yourself? When is it different for you as a male GP? This is a very personal question for you
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
When you have somebody, a female, coming to you to talk about menopause symptoms, problems, is that awkward for you? How do you approach that?
Um, for me personally, not at all. I I think sort of having been a GP now for the past 11 years, I feel confident enough and experienced enough to be able to have those discussions. Um, and the important thing I always kind of bring it back to is that relationship. It's about building that kind of foundational relationship. If I can help to put someone at ease, no matter what they're talking about, it could be a sensitive issue, then as long as I can help put them at ease, it opens the discussion. And it makes, it brings that trust element where someone feels I feel like I can trust you and now open up to you and talk about those symptoms. And I think that's the most important bit. So having that discussion about menopause or any other sort of sensitive issue is I feel absolutely fine doing it, and that's an important thing coming from the doctor, because if I'm showing a bit of hesitation or anxiety,
Mm.
that's not going to fill the patient with.
Yeah, we're gonna know. We're gonna sense
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think that's really important. So yeah, like I said, I don't particularly have any trouble having those conversations.
That's good to know. And what do you think then we should do on the patient side of things when we do sense that we're not getting what we need for whatever reason? Maybe they don't understand, maybe there's a lack of information and knowledge around menopause, or we just don't feel understood. What should we do about that?
I think a good thing to first do is, if like when you're making the appointment, like you said, first is if there is a or someone has a special interest in the field, try and book in to see them. And I know it's not always easy to do that. Second thing someone could do is, if there's a doctor in the practice that they have already built a relationship with, someone who they have seen regularly, it's sometimes worth booking to see them. You might maybe have to wait a little bit longer, but if that relationship has already kind of been built, then that might help as well.
Mm.
With regards to, as you said, if you don't feel like you're being heard, do you mean sort of within a consultation itself?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, as a patient, there's no reason why. Again, this is just thinking off the top of my head, where you can't say to the doctor, I don't think you're really sort of understanding what I'm trying to say. If the consultation isn't going very well, then patients do have the right to maybe see another doctor, get another opinion about it. So
Mhm.
those, I mean, we would always be open. I know I would, if someone said to me, I don't feel you're quite understanding what I'm trying to
Mhm.
say. You're not,
Mhm.
you don't, I don't feel that you understand how much it's affecting me.
Mm.
I'd want to know that, because I'd want to try and understand, or try and appreciate how significant the symptoms are for them.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's nice to hear as well. That's good. Um, and sometimes, from my experience, not personally, but from speaking to people, it's when they come away. I don't know if they'd have the the strength, the courage to say it in the moment, but sometimes when they come away, they think, actually, no, that wasn't what I was expecting. That wasn't what I wanted. And then quite often they'll tell someone like me or a friend, family,
Yeah,
usually close friends, and I try to encourage them to go back, but because they've had that sort of weird experience or not what they wanted for whatever reason, sometimes that can be um, tricky and require a bit more courage to go back. But you're saying that's quite okay to go and ask for somebody else, see
yeah,
somebody
absolutely.
else.
Yeah, yeah. There's no reason. I mean, they could always go back if they could always go back to the same doctor if I completely appreciate it's hard sometimes to in the moment to say, oh, to say, I don't think you're getting it.
Mm.
But yeah, either go back and see the doctor again, or the same doctor, and if you're comfortable doing that, and saying, I don't think we quite got to, we weren't quite on the same page, or see it, or see another doctor. There's no reason why people can't do that.
Yeah, yeah, great. And with your coaching as a health coach, and do you notice that some of the people that you're helping, even though they're coming to you for weight or whatever it might be, maybe clinical issues, but having a lifestyle approach around that, do you notice that menopause comes into that as well? Do you notice symptoms are discussed, or maybe not discussed, but you're noticing them? How do you handle that?
Yeah, it's, yeah. I mean, it definitely comes into it. is especially if, because the symptoms can, you can get symptoms that do cross over. So people could be coming in with, trouble, like they've been gaining weight, or they can't lose weight, or they're suffering with low energy levels, and just feeling sort of tired all the time, or poor sleep, and all those sorts of symptoms. And so you go through a process of sort of elimination and investigation as to what's going on, and then and obviously if it's women around the menopause age, and we can start to question, is what you're experiencing menopausal symptoms? And then that's when we can look at the options in managing menopause symptoms. So yeah, so there's a huge crossover in terms of symptoms and how we manage them.
Yeah, because we've talked before, haven't we, around that lifestyle and clinical approach. There's a massive crossover with that, and that can be one of the most effective ways. And we're both in that health world, the health space of just wanting to help people and help them
Yeah.
feel good in themselves, and whatever that takes to be able to do that. And when there's a lot of lifestyle approaches that come into that, not just medications, how do you help people with those, with the lifestyle approaches?
Yeah, and I think, like you say, having that integrated approach, that clinical and lifestyle approach, is really important, because actually we want to make sure we're not kind of missing anything else first in terms of other clinical sort of diagnoses, but then with and also supporting people with menopause management, but with it is HRT and things like that they need, and that's absolutely fine. But from a lifestyle perspective, there's so much more we can add. We can so much more we can help women with getting so much more kind of enjoyment out of life by improving certain aspects of their lifestyle alongside the medical management, and that's where sort of, as we've talked about, with lifestyle coaching, that kind of empowerment and ownership is really important, because once it's getting people to understand that we are all in control of our own health, and we can make those changes, and it can start anytime. We can start absolutely any time to make those changes, and once we start making those changes and feel motivated because it means something to us, we're connected with those changes, then it's really sort of empowering, and that's what leads to sustainable change as well. It's not going to be short-lived because we don't truly believe in making those changes. And what I tend to do is I use the sort of the lifestyle medicine sort of approach when I'm looking at all of these things. So it's based on around the sort of the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine, which is behind me here.
Yeah.
And what we do is we go through each of those aspects, quite deeply, in terms of what's happening, what are you eating on a daily basis, what's your diet like, looking at what macronutrients and micronutrients are you getting or might be missing out on, what kind of physical activity are you doing or maybe missing out on because you're so tired you're not actually able to do any physical activity. Then there's things about connection with other people, our relationships, and how that affects us, and our things like stress and emotional wellness, our sort of work-life balance. Are we too skewed over towards working all the time that we're burnt out? All of those aspects, they're so interconnected with one another that we can't just focus on one area. We can't just focus on menopause and trying to treat the menopause. There's so many other elements to it that if we can help improve someone's sleep, their energy levels will get better. We might, that will help with symptoms like the sort of the brain fog elements of menopause, because they can think clearer. So it's so sort of interconnected that it's really helpful to look at everything.
Yeah, and I find quite often that it's often the mental, the heaviness of dealing with everything can really affect mental health. And it's not just the fact that there's less hormones or more hormones, these fluctuations daily, hourly, whatever it might be. But just dealing with everything and all of the symptoms piling on top of each other, and then having to cope with what's going on in life as well, and still go to work and have a family. The mental side of that can be exhausting and really create um, or exacerbate any anxiety and low moods that was already there. Um, yeah, so yeah. Do you find then that looking at things like social connection and sleep, emotional wellness, instead of focusing, or maybe as well as I'm wondering how do you do the mental side of it? Is it looking at those six pillars? Is there something else?
Yeah, no, as in we focus around sort of the six pillars, and if there is sort of an element of um, so if one of the biggest elements is something like this, for example, kind of relationship issues, it's then how do we help with that aspect of things, so it's obviously having those deep conversations
Mm.
and working out how can we help the patient find or create goals to navigate their way through
Mhm.
the problems that they're going through. And it might be for example, they might need to seek some like talking therapies or something, or maybe if it's a relationship with a partner, start having those discussions with the partner if they haven't had those discussions. So it depends on what the sort of the underlying issues are. So it's looking at root cause and trying to then help, trying to help find ways in which they can improve those different areas.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Well, and if we want to have a chat with you, obviously we're going to need to be in your GP area if you're in our surgery. That would be quite cool, wouldn't it, if your patients were watching this? But how do we find you for health and well-being coaching and help around that aspect of it?
Yeah, so I am on social media, so Facebook, Instagram, and on LinkedIn as well. I also do have a YouTube channel, which is slowly building content, but he got a QR link next to me here, which
Okay,
people straight to my calendar if they want to book a discovery call with me, just to see whether they've got health goals that they would like to work with me on.
cool, great, brilliant. And is there anything that we've not talked about that you want to have now you're standing on a platform?
Uh, no, I think that sort of the key things are things like sort of the lifestyle element of if we're talking about sort of menopause and HRT, the lifestyle element is so important, and there is a lot of focus on kind of medication and HRT, which is absolutely great, because we know it really does help with symptoms, but having that holistic approach, and making or helping women look through the other elements and not just focus on the sort of the HRT element is really important, because there's so much more that can be gained from really improving all these different elements, from a nutritional side of things, from the physical activity, and all of that's so important in terms of helping things like building bone strength and making sure that we're giving the body the right nutrients that are going to support the brain as well, in terms of all that um, sort of symptoms that you get, and sleep, and all of those different things. So yeah, taking a very holistic approach is really key.
Yeah, yeah, we're definitely there's a reason why we're on the same page, isn't there? And it's because it's the page that works. It's the one that really gives us the results that we want to feel good in ourselves and Yeah, it's not a magic secret sauce. It's just what works, and the evidence is there, the research is there, and that's why I think it's easy, isn't it, for us to. Well, it would be really nice to think that we could just use HRT and that's going to solve it all, and it doesn't. You and I both know, which is why I think it's important when we're starting to look at changes in our lives that we can make to support ourselves in other ways, that it can be really overwhelming, and working with a coach can make it so much more simple and easier and quicker.
Absolutely.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thanks for coming on and
Thank you
having
very
a
much.
chat and
Yeah, it's been really
answering all
enjoyable.
my questions. Yeah, it's been good. Brilliant.
Thank you.